All right, so I'm wearing a green suit today, got some green Air Force Ones today, and the reason for that is I have a special guest, Ariel, director of the Tortoise Group.
Thank you for having me. I know, and then I wore the green shirt.
Okay.
So I feel like...
And we didn't even coordinate.
No, we did not coordinate.
Yeah.
It was meant to be.
Meant to be. I love my desert tortoise I have, Herman. He's over 40 years old now, so I wanted to represent for him. How did you get into the Tortoise Group? How did that all get started?
So I got into Tortoise Group in one of the most non-conventional ways possible.
Okay.
So prior to Tortoise Group, I was working in animal welfare. I loved my job. I loved the organization I was with. And I wasn't really looking to leave that place and go on to something else. But, you know, as you do in between, you know, breaks at your job, you're looking at jobs elsewhere. And I was just looking for anything else related to animals, like welfare or conservation work, things like that. And I saw this job come up for the Tortoise Group. And I had no prior knowledge about desert tortoises, Tortoise Group, nothing. And I read a little bit of the job description. I went on the website, visited their social media, and I was like, I really think the work that they're doing is fascinating because it really merges the animal welfare interests that I have and the prior experience I have with this conservation work for the desert tortoise. And so I applied, and it was one of those, I think it's a long shot.
Right.
You know, I don't live in Nevada. You know, I live in California at the time.
Oh, you were in California.
I was in California, and so I was like, you know, they may not want to take a chance on somebody that's going to have to move all the way there.
Right.
You know, they probably have someone in the area that's better qualified. But, you know, they reached out and they said, would you be interested in an interview? And I said, absolutely. And that first interview just went like a conversation, and it was just a type of energy that I was like, even if I don't get this, they are really cool and they're doing some really cool stuff. And, you know, I'm really, you know, excited for them and the work that they're doing. And they had me come back for a second interview. And then at that point I was like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And we'll just see how this goes. And then all the pieces just fell into place. And then less than 2 months after that, we're selling our house, packing up all of our stuff and our animals in a U-Haul, and we're moving to Nevada.
What got you into animal preservation and all that?
So I've always been interested personally in, you know, wildlife as well as just having animals. I grew up on a farm. We had horses and, you know, goats and chickens and pigs and all sorts of
Where,
fun
in California?
things. In California,
What
yes.
part?
Vacaville area. It's a little bit outside of Sacramento. I'd say 45 minutes.
Okay.
Grew up riding horses, loved animals. But at that time, the only career I saw in animals that was actually successful was being a veterinarian, which I tried that out, and it's a no. As soon as I saw them performing a surgery on an animal, I was like, I feel a little funny, and I just like fainted.
Did you?
I did, and I felt so bad because I was like, well, I guess working with animals is not going to be it for me, but, you know, I can always continue to support with, you know, rescuing animals, supporting nonprofits that do great work. And you know, I moved on and went into my college days, studied cultural anthropology, which has nothing to do with animals. And then I got this job with the Sacramento SPCA, and I was really in love with the work they were doing. The people that were there are just fantastic. They have a lot of people that have been there, you know, 20 plus years, and there's a reason for that. You know, they're just really passionate about the work. And so I was so excited when I got that job, and I was able to build my skills there. But I was like, you know, I would really love to do something more conservation related if possible. And so, but I don't have a degree in biology. So I didn't really see how that would come to fruition.
Was that a requirement?
A lot of conservation jobs, like Fish and Wildlife, Department of Fish and Wildlife, they're looking for biologists or people that have, you know, environmental science, you know, job or experience and education related to conservation work. And so I was like, I don't really see how I fit in there. But maybe someday something will come up, that door will open, and I'll see my way through. And that's what I feel Tortoise Group has been for me, is it's taking the skills and the education I have with like cultural anthropology, studying the way that people behave and why we do what we do in relation to how that is going to benefit the Mojave Desert tortoise, the conservation of them, and then all of these captive tortoises as well that, you know, cannot be released, but they are now lifelong and forever pets that, you know, we have to build an infrastructure to support them.
How long ago was this that you started this?
So I moved to Vegas in September last year. So it was very quick. It was about 2 months between being told, we'd love to bring you on board, to me moving out.
So you've been
here.
doing it for a year?
So, yeah, just about. Yeah.
Because we visited your rescue, I think it was last week, and I was just floored by your knowledge.
Oh, thank you. I really
appreciate
appreciate
just 1 year?
that. Yeah. Well, actually less. It's about since September of last year. So we're at like almost 9 months. So not even a full year yet.
That's incredible. How did you kind of soak up all that knowledge about the tortoises?
A lot of it was just being surrounded by the folks that have been a part of Tortoise Group for so long. We have some volunteers who have they've dedicated so much of their time and their energy and their passion for the organization and the health and benefit of the tortoises. So listening to them talk about all of the things that they know. Some of our board members have been with Tortoise Group for 20 plus years, and they've kind of had a similar experience to a lot of us that are a part of Tortoise Group, which was there was no direct correlation to being interested in tortoises, but then they moved to Vegas, they purchased a property that had a tortoise on it, and they realized they had no idea how to care for one. So they look it up online, and then Tortoise Group pops up as one of the top searches, and they say, wow, this group knows a lot about tortoises. I think I kind of want to be involved in that, or I want to go to their habitat and learn more about how they're caring for the tortoises. And so it creates this like legacy of people that just kind of fall into Tortoise Group, but then just become lifelong passionate tortoise people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
When you left California, what pets did you bring with you?
So before we left, we had a whole host of animals, and then unfortunately, it was just awful circumstance that several of them passed like right before we moved.
That's the hardest.
But we only ended up going with our 2 dogs.
Okay.
So we have one dog. She's 7 years old. She's a mini Australian Shepherd, but I put quotation marks around the mini because she's 55 pounds.
Okay.
She's shaped like an ottoman is what the vet has told us. And so she's on strict diet plan, but she's great. And then we brought over our other dog that we rescued from the Sacramento SPCA where I worked previously. He was a foster fail. So we had him from about 2 weeks old. We bottle fed him. And his brother, we fostered them, and then when the time came to turn them over to their new families, we just really struggled, and so we kept him.
Is that what it's called, a foster fail?
It's a foster fail when you keep them temporarily and then they don't end up leaving your home.
I'm going to use that for my wife later because unfortunately 2 of our dogs passed within a week of each other, and we have a farm with the horses, goats, chicken, pigs, so she wants a livestock dog, and she's like, let's just foster, and now I know what that word's going to be because we're going to fail. She's not giving it up.
That's exactly what happened to us, and we were like, we're not getting a puppy right now. At the time, we had our senior Pomeranian, we had 2 cats, one of them was 19, the other one was 8, and we had the mini Australian Shepherd. I was like, we have 2 dogs and 2 cats. That's a great balance. Let's not add another chaotic animal to this family. And then I couldn't let him go. And he is half Bernese Mountain Dog, half Golden Retriever. So it was one of those, like, you never see this kind of dog come through the shelter. He grew up with our other animals. The other animals tolerate him at the worst and love him at best. So I was like, I really want to keep him. I'm really glad we did because he's a very, people-oriented dog, and he's just fun to be around.
I was just wondering, like, from the farm and the horse, like, what you would have, like, once you go into regular house, not on the farm.
Yeah, we kept so the 19-year-old cat was originally from the farm. I adopted her when she was 6 weeks old, and if I did the math correctly, I was like 8 or 9 when I adopted her, and then I've had her this whole time. She was one of those indoor-outdoor. We got her for pest control reasons. We had some mice, and her mother was feral. She'd go out, she would hunt them. She was
putting in work. Yeah.
She was, and then she retired into the house, and then I was like, at 10 years old, I was like, I think she's doing great. We'll take her to the vet. They said she's doing fantastic. Take her, again at 14. They're like, yeah, she still looks great. And we had her till she was 19 years old. That's
wild. And I think that's why these rescues, have these problems, because we've had several rescues in already and we've visited facilities. And I think the hard part is that pet stores, or anytime they get these pets, they don't realize how long they can live.
Right.
Like, talking about the tortoises, we have one that's in his 40s.
Yeah.
That's pretty common, right? With tortoises?
It's very common. And, the sentiment is very much the same between animal rescues, regardless of species. Of course, with things like tortoises and other species, I know that some of the larger birds can live for quite some time too. And, it compounds that issue of not only do we have an excess amount of animals than we can place, they also live 80 to 100 years in captivity.
Wow.
So, 40 years old is very young for a tortoise.
He's not even his prime yet.
No, not at all. They don't even hit their like juvenile stage until 12 or 14 years old. And so someone came to me like, I think my tortoise is like in their 20s. I was like, okay, yeah, so they're fairly young. And they're like, no, I said 20s. And I was like, yeah, they live to like 80 to 100 years if you take great care of them. And the face that they made was like shock, but also horror at the same time. And, similar with like, puppy stores or places you can purchase animals, selling reptiles, you see the big reptile expos come through and they have different, usually not the Mojave Desert tortoises because they are federally protected. You can't breed them or sell them and with intention. Of course, backyard breeding happens, whether we like it or not. Sometimes it's just, it happens. Or, sometimes it's just lack of education. But there's a surplus of these animals and people go buy, sulcata tortoises who also get much larger and live a long time. And they're very cute when they're small and they take them home and then they're like, oh, especially the sulcatas, they're like, this tortoise is like over 85 pounds.
Wow.
What do I do with it? And I'm like, well, did you consider that or do any research before you purchase the animal? I'm like, no, not at all. So that's something we really like to do with our potential adopters is, let them know all of this type of stuff before they make that decision and let them understand, this is not a temporary type pet, this is not a toy. This animal, not just because, they live a long time, but also sometimes I think there's a little disconnect because puppies and kitties and bunnies are fluffy and they're really cute. And so sometimes with tortoises, I think that people don't have the same sentiment or empathy because, they're reptiles. They don't have, the same fuzzy, warm feeling that, a dog might give us. But it doesn't matter. They're still, living, breathing creatures. We have to treat them with respect, and we want ethical ownership and, ethical stewards to come forward to choose to take these animals, not just place them with anybody and then have them come back to us later on.
How many do you have right now?
Currently, we have 40 tortoises, ranging from hatchlings, which are very small, very little guys, all the way through like mature adults, which are probably about the size of your tortoise or maybe even a larger. They're quite big.
Is that pretty common to have about 40? Is that kind of what?
For us, yes. So our capacity is roughly around 40. And it's difficult because during the active season, we're able to adopt out tortoises and maybe bring in a couple more tortoises to try to place with us. But it's more difficult in the summertime if we're not getting a lot of adoptions. So if tortoises aren't leaving us, I can't create more space for them to come live, bring in new tortoises. I also struggle, of course, in the wintertime because when the tortoises brumate, which they go into their burrows, they go underground, and it's similar to hibernation, but they're not in the same type of deep sleep as like a bear when they go into hibernation. But when they are in brumation, we don't go through with adoptions because we don't want to disrupt the tortoises. We don't want to wake them up to transfer them to their new home. So if there's tortoises that come to us in need and they need placement or they need to come into our care, I can't create space the way that I could in the summer with adopting out a tortoise. So we sometimes end up having tortoises go with me at my house or in foster with us until we have more space available. But I feel like that's a sentiment that all animal rescues are going through right now. There's more animals than there are homes to place them.
How do they get to you? Is it mostly surrender or? So
we tell the public that we don't take people's personal tortoises, and the reason for that is because the need is too great. We get on average 1,000 calls a year regarding displaced tortoises. So these are people that are trying to either surrender their tortoise or they have found a stray tortoise and we can tell at that time that it's not a wild tortoise. Or people that say, I adopted a tortoise from you guys and, I'm now leaving Nevada and I can't take the tortoises can't leave the state of Nevada. So then they're like, well, what do I do with it? So we get a lot of them from there. We do get some from neglect cases as well. So if these animals are confiscated from, a poor situation, they will come to us and we can at least rehabilitate them and get them healthy again and available for adoption. So the majority are coming from, those neglect situations at this time. But yeah, we get We have a hotline volunteer who's been dedicated to answering the phone
That's a lot
for
of calls.
years and years and years. And that's her number one,
Yeah.
request that she gets is, I have a tortoise. I don't want it anymore. Or I have a family member who had a tortoise and they gave it to me because either they've, moved into assisted living, they've moved out of the state and we don't want the tortoise. Like, can you guys take it? And so it's really hard in those situations for me to have to tell people no, because I want to be able to say yes. I want to be able to take their tortoise and guarantee that the animal's not going to be dumped somewhere or eventually in a roundabout way get to us in poor condition. But, we only have so much space and adoptions have slowed down a little bit. So we're always trying to create new opportunities for tortoises to get adopted so we can serve the public better.
What's the craziest story you've heard, either through you or since the people before you?
From people before me, there was a tortoise that was very popular. The story ended up being very popular in Pahrump, and I was told this same narrative by like multiple people in Pahrump, so I guess it was quite popular. There was a call for a tortoise that I guess was in poor condition, and the responding officer went to this property and saw that they had taken this tortoise and put the tortoise in a barrel full of water and had taken a chain and actually those bolts, the screw bolts with a loop at the top you see for like camping stakes and things like that, had screwed that into the back of the tortoise and then had latched it so the tortoise could not get out.
Oh my goodness.
Which, of course, we never want to see. There's a lot of misconceptions about, do tortoises feel when you touch their shell? Do they have feeling sensation? And the answer is yes. Contrary to what we see often on TV, where turtles or tortoises are portrayed as like they wear their house and they will jump out of their shell and like walk around, and everybody, the joke is, oh, it's naked and but in real life, tortoises, their shell is part of their spine. So if you see an x-ray of a tortoise, their spine goes along the top of that shell.
Oh, wow.
So when you pet them, they have sensation, and there's blood vessels, nerves, and tissue in that area. So to drill into the back of a tortoise is just, not acceptable at all. And the responding officer pulled the tortoise out of the water because I guess the guy thought it was a turtle and thought it could swim. And that officer was just so upset about what he saw that he ended up taking the tortoise and adopting that tortoise and rehabilitating it and taking the time to have it go see a vet and, recover fully.
Wow.
And the tortoise is around still and it's doing great. Yeah, I mean, he does have a little bit of scarring and damage from, the injury, but he's doing great now. But a lot of people in Pahrump are like, do you know about the tortoise that was adopted by the police officer that saved him? And I'm like, no. And it's just always, it's a great like story at the end, but it really highlights the
disturbing,
it's misunderstanding and lack of education about tortoises and reptiles in general and how to house them and how to take care of them.
So these people who paint the shell, that's a no-no too, right?
Right. So we, like, when you guys came to visit, we have our tortoise Rojo who came to us. He was a transfer in, and they said that he was a stray. I doubt it, just because when you guys were there, you saw how approachable he was. He was not afraid, and
which means that they've been around people.
Yeah, and so they've realized that humans are food sources, and so he'll come right up to you, and you can see the back of his shell is painted red or had been at some point with some type of either paint or spray paint. I'm not quite sure, but he came with another tortoise that's also painted a little bit. So we thought initially it was to distinguish the two tortoises, but they're both red, and they're both male. So I don't know how it was helping them, but he came to us. He was in a wire dog crate, similar to the kennels you can get at Petco or PetSmart for your pets. And he
had it rough, huh?
He had it rough, and he was very stressed when I first took him out to the habitat. When I set him down, he didn't want to explore initially. I think he was just literally shell-shocked. He was very stressed, and he wasn't sure what to do. And then within a week, he started being a little bit more, exploring. He's a little more confident in himself. And so now, as you saw when we went out there, he's like, oh, hi, this is my place, and that's my home, and I'm comfortable here.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, of course, we are very excited when they do well like that. But some of them just, you can tell that they're a little fearful of humans. They're a little traumatized, and it can take some time for them to feel comfortable again. Yeah.
So I know we don't want to see male and female, because then we're
Correct.
going to have
Babies. Yeah.
We don't want to see male and male, right? Because they could fight.
Correct. So in the wild, tortoises are solitary. The Mojave Desert tortoise is a solitary creature. In the desert, they're wandering around, and they will only really come across each other either accidentally or they come together to mate. So if a male sees another male, they will do one of two things. They'll either ignore each other if they really didn't see one another, or they will fight because they can't be territorial. So the gular horn, which is that bottom piece of their shell that comes up, kind of wraps around their neck on the more mature male tortoises. That is one of the ways you can tell it's a male tortoise. And we theorize that is to help them with fighting other males, because when tortoises fight, they push each other, and then the goal is to knock the other one onto its back, because tortoises can't
Once they're on their back, it's done.
Yeah, they can't turn themselves back over, and in the wild, the tortoise that lost and is stuck on their back would die. So a predator, or from dehydration, heat exhaustion, something like that. So at home, if you have two males, they will fight, and that could happen to your tortoise as well. You know, they can flip. When they do flip, you know, it's very stressful for them. You know, it can be not a great experience. So we recommend not having males together. We also recommend not having females together either. They may not fight in a territorial sense, but they will fight over food and access to resources, because in the wild, they want as many resources as far as food and water as they can retain, so that then they can produce the eggs and have the nutrition to be able to do that. So they will push each other out of the way. They might try to bite each other. You know, they can be pretty picky to each other. So we really recommend, if you have more than one tortoise, keep them in a separate housing. So, but we do with our adoptable tortoises, we really try to tell people a one tortoise policy is best. It just minimizes accidents with them getting hurt from fighting, accidental breeding, and, you know, of course, we want to keep them as minimally stressed as possible, and sometimes just being in the close proximity to another tortoise will stress them out.
So you've said two things today that really are going to help me. One is the foster fail.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Second one is we have cows. We have a place in Texas too, and we have cows there. My wife wants to go be with the cows, and I have a business here, real estate business, for the last 20 years. So I'm not going, and she's harassing me to go. But now I can use that we can't go because I can't take Herman out of the state.
Yeah, Herman can't
go. Is that true?
That is true.
Make it official so she can hear it.
Yeah, Herman cannot leave.
There you
I'm
go.
so sorry.
So what is that? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so that is a rule from the state of Nevada, and the reason for that is because the tortoises are federally protected, and so when you adopt a tortoise, we use the terminology adopt, similar to a dog or a cat, but it is different. It really mirrors a stewardship. So although you can say, like, I adopted a tortoise, or I have a pet tortoise, truly we are just the stewards for these animals. They do belong to the state of Nevada. They're considered the property. So if I was to adopt a tortoise and then leave, that tortoise can't come with me because it's not legally I do not have any legal ownership.
That makes sense.
So oftentimes when we refer to our tortoise community, we say like our tortoise custodians or our tortoise stewards, because yeah, pretty much, because they're just doing, long-term babysitting, long-term fostering almost.
This was their house.
Yeah. I mean, the desert was their home, and then we moved in here, and,
disrupted it.
We as humans made it our decision to make them into pets, and so it's a human obligation to make sure that these animals are taken care of, and they're ethically, they're going to live long lives regardless of us, but we want them to live quality long lives, Living in a dog crate is not ideal. No, or living in a terrarium, it's not ideal for them.
So, being in real estate, I'm wondering, like, when these builders are building new homes, do they have to do something first to make sure that there's no tortoises there? How does that work?
Yeah, so a lot of the times when they're going to, map out a site for new construction, whether it's, commercial or residential real estate, they will have construction monitoring occur. So a biologist, an authorized desert tortoise biologist, will go out on site as they're doing the
mandatory, right?
Mandatory, they will go out there, and then if any employee or on the crew finds any animal, regardless of whether it's a tortoise, but specifically in this case, if they do find a tortoise or signs of a tortoise, so like a burrow or something like that, they need to notify the biologist, and they will remove the tortoise.
Okay,
and
so it could still keep going.
They'll relocate the tortoise to a safer area. It may be in this local, but it may also not be. They may choose to relocate the tortoise to other parts of the state where there's, less human development. But yeah, they go out there and they want to make sure that, as minimal as possible, that, wildlife is not being disrupted by the construction of,
It seems like you'd be confusing the tortoise that now you're
I bet it, and for the tortoise, I bet it's very jarring. The tortoises, because they live for so long, they'll live in the same area, the same territory, that entire time. And now they're being picked up, put in a box, and then taken somewhere else. And I bet that's very jarring for them. And that is a concern for the population decline is, the fragmentation of tortoise habitat, because we're building out into the desert further and further. And we're putting solar farms out there because we want to be more green and sustainable, but it's not sustainable for the tortoises.
Yeah. What are they eating in the wild?
So tortoises eat vegetation only, so they don't eat meat of any kind. So they're out there grazing on desert plants, so native desert plants. They really love the globe mallow. You guys saw that when you came to the habitat. That was the big kind of bush-looking plant with little orange flowers on it.
Yeah.
They really like those. We do, at our habitat, they really like the purple blooms on the desert willow trees. So we have those planted out there, and the volunteers and myself will pull the blossoms off and feed it to the tortoises.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's a great way for people to connect with these animals. It's hard to build advocacy or the empathy for an animal you've never seen before. You can live in Vegas your entire life and never see one. So it's really a great opportunity for people to come see the tortoise and say, wow, this creature is living out there. I may not see it, it may be out really far out there, but they're out there, and, that tortoise is probably going to be here longer than I'm going to be alive.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So does your website or what's a resource that they can teach what to feed? Because I think they're probably learning on TikTok or other places that are probably telling them the wrong stuff.
Right. And I think that is our biggest issue for folks is they're trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to use, TikTok, ChatGPT, they're, the AI programs, and, they're trying to do the right thing. They want to do right by their tortoise, but then, they're getting all these results that are not what we would recommend for the tortoise, or maybe it's the right diet for a different species of tortoise, because there's so many species, and a lot of people are also not aware of the diversity of tortoises. I mean, there's hundreds of types of tortoises. So our website has tons of information regarding captive desert tortoise care. So what your habitat, if you're going to adopt a tortoise, or maybe you already have a tortoise, but you're thinking, I really want to give them the best quality of life, and I want to redo their space.
Right.
We have all the instructions on what to feed them, what native plants you can plant in your yard for them.
That's cool.
If people call us and say, hey, I saw that globe mallow is a native plant I can put for my tortoise, where do I get it? We can tell them what nurseries have it in the area, and have them go out there and say. Would
it go in their enclosure or somewhere nearby where they can
It can be both. Okay. It's really up to the amount of space that you have. We recommend minimum 600 square feet for a tortoise, for an adult tortoise habitat. If you do more, great. We just really would like to see that minimum 600, because we want. Imagine in the wild, these guys they're traversing the desert landscape, and they're for miles, and so we want to see as much space as possible. But yeah, you can go on our website. We have a section called Care Sheets. These are really cool because they're downloadable, printable PDFs, completely free, and everyone can has accessibility to them. You just print them off, and it has all sorts of topics from what to feed them, and how to build a habitat, but also how do I know if my tortoise is ill? What should I be looking for? How do I know if my tortoise is male or female? Ticks and tortoises, and how do I know if that's a tick on my tortoise, and do tortoises get ticks? Things like that. Lots of different things that people maybe don't think of when thinking about adopting or housing a tortoise in their yard. So lots of different things.
You're super smart. You're soaked up a lot in a year.
Yeah, I just really love this job. I really love Tortoise Group.
Tell.
It's just one of those opportunities where it's like you're getting to do the best of both worlds. You're doing the advocacy for the wild tortoise, which I love. Let's protect our wildlife, and let's get people excited about animal conservation, but also it's similar to dogs and cat rescues. I get to go out there and make a difference right now in the lives of a tortoise right in front of me, not just the metaphorical wild tortoise that's out there that maybe I'm never going to come across, but I can make the difference in the life of a tortoise that's right in front of me that maybe didn't have a great start, but I know it will find the right person for them, the right family for them, or sometimes even schools. We have some schools that have adopted tortoises from us.
Oh, really?
They go through the process. The kids build a habitat. The kids then, like every year, they'll have whatever grade kind of does start the science classes. They're like, they go out and they learn about desert tortoises.
Awesome.
And so it's a really great way to continue that legacy of people wanting to protect wildlife.
I was thinking about that because on the way here, I was chatting with my wife on the phone, and she was mentioning that she's even seen them at like retirement homes.
Yeah, I just went to one yesterday. So there is a place here in Vegas that's a post-acute therapy place that people, sometimes they stay there for long periods of time, but sometimes they go there for rehab after they've had a surgery or medical procedure. And they have a tortoise that lives there named Wild Bill, and he's been there 8 years. And so I went out yesterday to give the staff a little update. They've had some turnover, and they've had a lot of staff that were like, can we give him watermelon? Should we put a blanket on him if he's cold outside? He looks cold. Can he come inside and sit on a patient's bed? I'm like, okay, no. So just going out and like,
they're trying to be sweet. They just don't know
and
any
like,
better.
just providing them the proper education and telling them all the things that they are doing right. And then just giving some pointers and feedback on things that they could be doing better.
Is watermelon a no?
No, we do not recommend any fruit if you
Okay.
can avoid it. If you do it like once a year as a special treat on their birthday, you know, that's okay. But there's a lot of sugar in the fruit that is just
makes sense.
doesn't benefit their diet and can cause some GI upset. So we recommend only the desert tortoise food that is on our website. You can buy it from Chewy. I've seen it at Petco, PetSmart, Amazon, and it's really easy. You just mix it with water. You put it out for them, and they'll eat it. Yeah, they
hydrates them that way too.
It does. It helps with the hydration as well. And then we have a list on our website of what foods you can opt in to feed them, and what foods are a no-go. So like lettuce is a common one. People love to give them lettuce. Provides no nutritional value. I mean, we as humans, we eat it as a filler.
Right.
Like, because we're trying to lose weight, so we just fill our stomachs with, the lettuce.
But it doesn't do anything.
No, and so the tortoises, it's the same. So we opt them out and say, like, dandelion greens are another great option. You can grow dandelions in a pot in your yard for your tortoise. You can buy the dandelion greens at some grocery stores, like, as an alternative to the lettuce. But we do have the list because, people are, again, they're trying to do the right thing.
Right.
And, tortoises like puppies, if you offered it to them, they're probably going to try it, and they'll probably end up eating it. So they're like, well, my tortoise loves insert thing they shouldn't be eating.
Right.
Well, of course they do, because it's sweet, and
Who wouldn't?
I would eat it too. If you offered me a kale salad over, a donut.
Right. I'm taking the donut.
I'm taking the donut.
Well, I didn't give Herman the watermelon. I was asking for a friend.
Okay.
But,
I won't tattle on
you
her
would
then.
think, since it's hydrating, it was good, and we were both I don't know. Anyways, but so how much do the volunteers help? Because I saw that we were there on a Wednesday. That's when we're feeding. We're feeding once a week?
We are feeding once a week during the active season.
Okay.
If you have a tortoise and you're feeding them more than that, that's not terrible. We just recommend don't overfeed them. So like, I've seen some people say they feed their tortoise twice a day, and I'm like, maybe not. We don't want them to become
twice a week is okay. 3 times, or would you stick with one?
I would say up to 3 times at most.
Okay.
But not, not 5 days a week, not every day, not twice a day. Because again, they will graze on the native plants that if you have them in your yard, they love grass, Bermuda grass.
Grass is okay.
They'll go and graze during the in between time, and as long as your tortoise appears to be at a healthy weight, and they're not having any GI concerns, I would just stick to like once or twice a week.
Okay.
But yeah, the volunteers are, they are our eyes and ears for both Tortoise Group, but also for the tortoises, the voices for the tortoises. So when they're not well, it's our volunteers that go out there and they take the notes and they say, hey, so-and-so is not looking too hot. Can we start, monitoring them? And I say, yeah, okay. And I'll go out there and we'll take a look at them, see if it needs to be seen by a vet type of situation. But yeah, the volunteers are a huge help in every aspect of what we do. Our hotline, our 24/7 Tortoise hotline has been manned by one of our lead volunteers for years. And
it's just a volunteer. Wow.
So the phone calls will go to her, and if it's something that needs to be, further investigated, or if they're looking to speak to me, that they'll come down the pipeline to me. But she is one of our most dedicated staff. The volunteers help us with the adoptions too. So if we have tortoises getting adopted, they can volunteer and help us take the tortoises to the new folks' home. If we always are looking for new volunteers too.
Are you?
Always. A lot of our volunteers have this veteran status of they've been with us for so long.
Right.
They're very educated on all aspects of tortoise care and the adoptions in our programs, but they are aging out. And we would love to see.
How do they become a volunteer?
So becoming a volunteer is really easy. We don't have a minimum requirement for commitment. So if you only can volunteer a couple hours out of an entire year, we'll still invite you to our volunteer appreciation event because we want to honor the fact that you gave us those few hours out of your year. So to be a volunteer, you just go on our website. There's a volunteer interest form and there's a waiver. The interest form, you just click on the categories of things you would be interested in helping with.
Okay.
And then at that point, we will shoot you an email there when we have an opportunity come up. We often post about it as well on social media.
What's the website? We'll put it in the description.
tortoisegroup.org.
Tortoisegroup.org, okay.
Facebook and Instagram, Tortoise Group. We're right at the top. But we tell people we'll post if there's something new and exciting about, come volunteer for a wellness clinic, come volunteer for, this outreach event. We will post it on social media too, because, we're not always on our, emails checking those things. So people can then sign up for those events, and you don't have to have any prior knowledge of tortoises. We have a lot of folks that have never had a tortoise, and they're like, this just seems like something fun for me and my friends to do,
you just have to be a tortoise be around a tortoise once and you'll be hooked. They're so adorable.
It is. And I've been here since September and I've had multiple tortoises at my house for either medical observations or I have a hatchling at my house right now he's not quite big enough to go out to the habitat because he's just, we prefer if they're at least 2 inches by 2 inches in diameter before they go out because, they're so fragile at that size, and we want to make sure that they don't go out there and, there are fire ants that will get them and,
or if they flip over.
They flip over, and they do. They flip over. He does it all the time. I'm always flipping him back over.
Trying to climb up something.
Always. They're like, oh, I can do this. And they don't have fear yet at that size, so they don't understand how gravity works just yet, so they're climbing and doing.
Do they have to be a certain age for you to adopt them out?
No. So we will adopt out a hatchling if we have it available. The process is slightly different because when you're building your habitat, we have a hatchling instruction care list for the burrow and for the little habitat for them because it doesn't need to be the 600 square feet, but there are certain precautions that go into it because they are so small. So there's, a top that goes on the little habitat fenced area because, again, ravens or other birds will eat them. And so providing them a little bit of additional, protection, but we do adopt them out when we get them. It's just sometimes they're a little harder to place because there's just extra steps that go into preparing the habitat.
What do you think is kind of causing people to be intimidated about adopting? Is it building their habitat or the amount of time they live?
I think it's a combination of 3 things, and those are 2 of the main things. I think the first one is, people get animals, and a lot of the times people get animals on impulse. They adopt a cat or they purchase a puppy or they, I got this dog from Craigslist, people, they get animals impulsively. They don't always do the research. And so they're not aware that,
for sure.
They live this long. They can't leave the state of Nevada. They have to have the habitat for them. They have to live outside. These animals cannot live in like even the giant terrariums in your home, they have to live outside. They need the UV rays from the sun to develop properly and to be healthy. So I think,
it's a big commitment.
It's a big commitment. I also think it's a lot of the people that have tortoises and love tortoises, they already have one or two. They're not looking to add additional tortoises to their home. And again, we really like to adopt the one tortoise per household policy. So it's sort of this
that makes sense.
Group of folks that they love the tortoise, they advocate for the tortoise, but they already have one.
But it's not like having 3-4 dogs.
It's not, it's not the same. They can't cohabitate in the same way. And I think it's also just the yard requirements. A lot of folks, they live in apartments or townhomes or they rent, and the landlord wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with them tearing up a whole section of their yard for a tortoise.
So where would they go if you guys are full? What kind of options do you guys give them?
So if people come to us and they say, hey, I have a tortoise that I don't want, SOS, help. So I will go ahead and either I'll email them or I will give them a call on the phone, and I'll listen to their story. I want to hear what they've tried, if they've tried anything, and then I will go through and give them some like one-on-one support and say, hey, I totally sympathize and understand the stress. I know that having an animal that you have to rehome is an unpleasant experience, and a lot of these folks are in crisis. So when they come to me, they're at 10 out of 10 stress level, and sometimes just having someone to vent to about the situation will help. Yeah. And then a lot of the times is sharing with them, like, have you tried posting them on Facebook? Because there's a lot of people in like a desert tortoise enthusiast group that they're looking for tortoises. So you can try to rehome your tortoise that way.
And they can still come to you guys for the resources on the website, how to prep their space for it.
Yes, and when someone decides to rehome their tortoise, we love if they tell us that they've done so we can fill out the RLAP. That's a document that just shows the transfer of like ownership, ownership from one entity to the other, just for documentation purpose. But we try to help them with, have you tried, Facebook groups? Have you tried Pet Finder? Have you tried, the Nextdoor app? Things like that, to try to connect with people that would be interested. And also just reminding them that everything with tortoises, including rehoming them, is slow. It takes time. If someone is interested in a tortoise, it may take them a little bit of time to get their yard ready. Or
to set that up.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things we really try to highlight during the adoptions process, is that it is never too early to legacy plan for your tortoise. So if you get a tortoise, and even if you get a hatchling and it's not even a year old, it is never too soon to create a plan to ensure that they do have somewhere to go, or you have a plan to what to do with them if you either have to leave or if you unexpectedly pass away.
Got to put your tortoise in the trust.
Yes, people assume that their children or their grandchildren want the animal, and they may even have verbal confirmation, like, yeah, grandma, I'll take the tortoise, but things change. So it's just preparing for the fact that, like, if there is worst case scenario and nobody wants the tortoise can come back to Tortoise Group under like a trust or a will document, and we can then go ahead and get that tortoise prepared for rehoming or adoption. But yeah, that's usually our biggest concern. It's just a lot of folks are trying to find placement for their tortoise, and there's just not as many folks that have the availability or the space for a tortoise.
You're doing amazing things.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Trying.
Yeah, I mean, when we saw your setup there and how much love and care and everything you guys are doing for these tortoises, it was super, super refreshing to see.
Thank you. And, we try really hard, and I think that that's one thing about tortoises and people that are involved with tortoises or love tortoises that we all kind of have in common, is that we are all incredibly stubborn. And we don't give up. So even if, all the odds are against us, just like tortoises, when they're in the desert, there's no water, there's minimal food, it's really hot, it's the desert, and yet they're thriving and surviving in the desert, and we're the same. Like we're going to continue to advocate for the tortoises. We're going to continue to do right by them, and, give each the ability to be able to say yes and help every individual tortoise. That's really what we're here to do.
That's awesome. So how can people help? They can volunteer.
They can volunteer.
Can they donate?
They can also donate. I know it's hard in the sense that like people will come to us and say, well, what do the tortoises need?
Right.
And because with other species like dogs and cats, you know, there's a laundry list of things like toys and treats.
Yeah, we did
and
blankets for pigs.
Exactly.
We did a bunch of stuff, yeah.
And so the tortoises are not very interested in toys. They don't have the same interest in that type of stuff. So really the main thing we're looking for is just monetary contributions. And that's because that can be utilized in various different ways. So if we have a tortoise that's ill, you know, and needs to be seen by a vet, you know, we can provide that care and say yes to that tortoise receiving, you know, the really thorough veterinary service that they need. We're able to say yes to, you know, creating more space for the tortoises. We're able to say yes to, you know, going out and doing more events, you know, if we have the support. And so although not as exciting and as, you know, I myself really love when we donate to like other rescues and say, I'm going to go get the toys, you know, picking out the blankets like for the pigs.
Yeah, we had fun with the pigs.
It's really
and the blankets,
fun. Yeah. And
yeah.
it's just the tortoises are different. If people want to donate the food, they can. You know, we always would love that as well. But truly the monetary contributions, because we want to be able to continue our legacy here in the Valley. And, you know, every donation makes that possibility.
And that can be done on the website?
It can. So tortoisegroup.org, you can donate there.
Tortoisegroup.org.
We just finished our fundraiser yesterday for Earth Day. So we were advocating to raise funds for our conservation efforts for the desert tortoise. And, you know, so that fundraiser is still, the link to that is still open. So you can go on our website. The website is the link. So if you go on social media and you see our Earth Day fundraiser, that link is just going to take you to our website where you can donate and make a contribution to help us continue to do our conservation work for the wild tortoises.
Perfect. So everybody go to Tortoise Group.
Adopt a tortoise, maybe.
Yes,
if it's right
adopt,
for you.
Donate,
if it's right for you.
Volunteer, all the things. So thank you again for all the information. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.